Welcome to Dating Log, the podcast that records the ups and downs of dating in your 30s and beyond. I'm your host, Wyndham Juno, and this is episode 21, I Fall in Like Easy. This is a special episode where, for the first time, I interviewed two guests at once. They met on a dating app and now refer to each other as platonic life partners. We dive into their unique connection, explore polyamory, queerness, and gender identity, and further tackle the topic of sober dating. Here are Ess and Kaide.
Hi, my name is Ess. My pronouns are they, them. I identify as queer non-binary. I live in Vancouver, Canada, on the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I also am polyamorous and practice relationship anarchy in my dating life.
Hi, my name is Kaide. I use he, they pronouns. I identify as non-binary trans masc, or a feral lost boy, depends on the day. um, I also live in so-called Vancouver, and also identify as polyamorous, which is fun. But I just turned 31 this year, and I've been poly for almost 6 years. So that's the gist of me.
That's where you're at.
Yeah.
All right. And I don't know the story, and our listeners don't know the story. I would like to know, how do you two know each other? Kaide, would you like to begin?
Sorry, I just giggle every time someone asks me this question because it's so fun. And like Ess and I talked a little bit before this, obviously, just to like prepare ourselves. We're like, how do we want to go about this?
Yeah.
But Ess and I actually met on Tinder
How
in
long ago?
2020. In 2020, so almost 5 years ago now. And we I don't know, we started becoming friends through that, and like we would text till all hours of the morning in the beginning of our relationship. It was super wholesome, and we just like really bonded. And then we hung out a couple times, and I don't know, I'll let you chime in here because I feel like this is your favorite part to tell, so I'll let you do this. It's the honor of sharing the story.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
also because I tell the story better than Kaide does.
Yeah, I forget all these details. I'm like, oh, it's fine. They saved my life. It's cool. I'm so nonchalant about it. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let me pipe in and fill in the holes for you a little bit. And I'm like, oh, you know what, Ess, you just tell the story. It's fine.
So it was January of 2020, so before COVID times. And Kaide and I had been chatting for like a couple weeks. And then we had this like big snowstorm. And it was one of the like very few times that the train shut down. Like it almost never happens. And so I couldn't go into work because I had to go east, but the train was running west. And so I felt like very bad as a, person like calling into work saying, I can't come in. But then I could take the train in the other direction. And so I went and hung out with Kaide, and I brought him this like jar of homemade vegan stroganoff because he was a chef at the time. And then he was like, oh my God, this is so good. And we like hung out, and that was like a spontaneous hangout, and it was really chill. And we had already had plans to go on a hike a couple days later. So then we go on this hike. So it's the second time we've ever hung out. And I love cold exposure swimming. It's one of my favorite things to do. And Kaide grew up in Florida. And so they'd been living here for quite a few years as like an adult, but there's just something different when you grow up in a really cold place that I think you're like a lot more acclimatized to it. So we go on a hike, and it's in a canyon near the city, and the canyon has this like glacier fed river that runs through it. And so we go on a hike, and then I was like, it was a part of the plan, like, let's go and do a dip. Mind you, it's January. We just had a huge snowstorm. And so we hiked down maybe about like half an hour down the river, and we strip, and I go in the river, and I'm like splashing water on myself and like sitting down in it and like getting all nice and into it. And then Cade comes in behind me, runs in like to his ankles, like splashes water on his face, and then goes, nope, 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 nope. And like walks back out and sits down and starts like hyperventilating a little bit. And I'm like, oh no, is something like, was this really cold or is something wrong? So I like come out of the river and I'm like looking at Cade and like his lips are turning blue and he's like shivering uncontrollably. And so I was like, oh my God, oh no, what have I done? I don't know this person. I just took them swimming and they like talked a big game. So I thought that they had done this before. And so then I'm like in the nude and I'm like helping Cade like put on his socks and like put on his sweater so he could start to warm up. And then I had to like half like push him back up the mountain carrying both of our bags to like get him back up to the car. And then I like drove him home and like ordered a pizza and like cuddled him for like a couple hours until he was like warm enough and was like okay. And I was like okay leaving him, you know, because I was like quite worried about him. So that I feel like was a really really funny story, but also like a really good bonding experience. And so
Yeah,
that was
basically
like
I
the
saved my
start of,
life.
yeah, yeah, that was the start of a very like good partnership where we just take really good care of each other.
Yeah, basically we realized that we were like each other's like people because I just cracked jokes the entire time after. Like I was just literally
Like,
making the most ridiculous like self like sabotage-esque like jokes about the situation like the entire way up the hill like back to the car, and like by the end of it I was like, I don't even know why you want to hang out with me, but do you want to eat some pizza?
and what I said was, I want to hang out with you because even though this was an absolute disaster and I'm like concerned for your health, I'm also giggling the entire time.
Yeah, we
And
had like
like,
the
I'm
best
having
time.
a great time.
I
Oh my
just
God.
almost passed away. Like,
But to
yeah,
his credit, Cade has gotten a lot better at cold water swimming.
I
So,
have. Recently, I went to Oregon and I did a cold dip with in a frozen lake, and that was like, I called Ess or told them about this, and I was like, "We made it! I did it!" Like, so
And
anyway.
was this, you met on Tinder, was this a date or a hangout? What was it?
well, it depends on who you ask.
Yes, spill the beans.
I think I was coming from a place that it was a hangout, and S thought it was a date. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we had this conversation like maybe 2 years into our relation, like our friendship, where I was like, Cade was talking about another person that he was going on a date with and like how
Yeah.
they thought it was a date. And Cade was like, it's just a hangout. And I was like, but you met on Tinder. Like, what are you talking about? If you meet on Tinder, it's like automatically a date. That's like why you're on Tinder. And Cade was like, well, no, I don't assume that. And I was like, oh my God, everything suddenly makes so much more sense. That I was
Mm-hmm.
so confused because, like, for the first couple months, like, we were just like hanging out, and so I just realized that like, oh, okay, this isn't, we're not dating, like that we're just hanging out. We're just friends. So I just kind of like figured out that that's where Cade was coming from. And that was fine. I was okay with that. And it was like later on, then we like ended up dating for a little bit, and then we became business partners, and then we were roommates later on. And so we've had like a whole bunch of different iterations of our relationship. And so now we're
Yeah.
just
Okay.
like platonic life partners, is what we call it. But I think it's so funny that like
Mm.
someone will go on Tinder and like talk to someone for like 3 weeks and
Yes.
then hang out with them and be like, well, this isn't a date. Like, well, who does
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, well, Kate does that. So,
Me.
Kate,
Exactly.
Yeah.
well, you
I don't
explained
know.
what
I
you're
feel like,
thinking. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like at the time with where I was, especially in within my polyamory journey, I've always like been so like, I don't know, I want to like get to know people and like build a bit of foundation before like I would say that I'm dating somebody. So I guess it's like the intention behind it is that like I'm getting to know you. So it's not a date yet because I don't know you. So like we're hanging out to see if that's what we're gonna do. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I've never heard
Yeah.
someone explain this before.
Yeah. And I think this is the cool part about like, so when S and I met and like all of this happened, I think we both really have explored this like journey of polyamory and what that has led us to in our life of like living as people who believe in relationship anarchy. Because when people hear the story about me and S, they're like, what the absolute hell? Like, they're like, what are you guys talking about? And we're like, I I have so many friendships like this, whereas like I've had this like really cool experience where like, yeah, maybe we've slept together and whatever, but now we have this like beautiful, intimate, deep connection that is like just so based in like pure love for one another that it expands like what I think the traditional archetype of like relationships are when it comes to like being in love with somebody, because like I am very much so in love with S as like somebody who is like one of my people, and so that's where like this relationship anarchy is like this bigger concept that like all of my relationships really matter to me. And it's like the intention behind it is that they're deep and there's meaning behind them, regardless if you're my romantic lover or you're my very very best friend. Like I will call S for absolutely anything because I know that they'll take care of me. But that's also because we have history and we have this beautiful relationship that has transcended and had cycles through different styles of relationship, like S said, right? So
Before we go too much further, you've used the
yeah.
term relationship anarchy. Both of you have used that a
Yeah.
few times. And that was mentioned once on the show 2 years ago. So,
Oh wow.
Kate, could you explain shortly what it means?
Essentially, relationship anarchy is like there's no hierarchy to the way relationships are like built. It's just kind of the idea that yeah, like all relationships matter and like they're just as equal whether they're like platonic or romantic is kind of like the base of how I would explain it to somebody. There's a manifesto, you should read it. It's amazing. It was written in like I'm pretty sure like the 70s, something like that.
Oh,
It's pretty
wow.
wild. Yeah, it's like really old, but it's super cool. And that's what led me into this like exploration of it too. It was just this idea of like deepening my relationships on a like more intentional level, and that's kind of what it's about.
And is this all relationships, including friendships, colleagues,
Yeah.
family? Or, oh,
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And that's like, as we dive into this, we'll get into it. But like, S and I have a couple other people in my life where, I was not dating anybody, but I was like dating my friends because I was like, I want to get to know these people and I want to like spend time with them. And like, these people fill my cup and they bring good energy to me. You know what I mean? And it was like, S is a huge reason of why I like have figured out who I am as a person. Like, they have shaped Cade in a lot of ways, and so it's like that's what this is. It's like this intentional relationships is like the idea that love transcends like just my romantic partner.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also like listening to Kate talk about our relationship. I'm like literally falling more in love with him. But um, I feel like when we tell people this story and they see our chemistry together, they're
Mm,
confused as to why we're not like in a traditional relationship. And on the one sense, like we are in a relationship, we are like honoring the fact that we deeply love each other.
mhm,
But when we like were dating briefly, we figured out that there's also some like very real needs that we both have that we cannot meet. And so even though there's a lot of love and there's a lot of ways in which we do meet each other's needs, like especially through service, that's a big part of our relationship is we
mhm,
like take care of each other, we show up for each other. And so it's the other things that we need that we find in other people that are in our circle and that are in our support network. Because a huge core part of relationship anarchy is that not one person can be your everything.
Yeah, they can bring a lot to the table, but it's hard to fill all the seats. That's how I look at it.
So,
Yeah.
you two met on Tinder. You met up. One of you thought it was a date. One of you thought it was just a hangout. Over time, you realized, hey, we are good for each other, but not in this traditional relationship, monogamous kind of way. I see nods. Awesome. And you've both mentioned that you are polyamorous or practicing polyamory. Is it one or the other specifically?
Yeah, I would say I identify as polyamorous.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I said earlier is that I'm practicing relationship anarchy, because
Okay.
those are, polyamorous is a title, relationship anarchy is like a style.
Fantastic. And Cade, for you?
Yeah, I actually just got out of a year-long monogamous relationship
Oh,
a couple weeks ago. So that was by choice. And so the word that I like to use is like, oh, what is it? It's like what's this, like ambiamorous or something like that. So essentially means that like you can flop between polyamory and like being monogamous. So it's like you can kind of I was kind of like looking forward to more like of a monopoly style relationship with this person, but
hmm.
it ended up just like being more monogamous. And then as we like went through it, the relationship was ending and I was like, yeah, I really am just poly. Like I am a polyamorous person. I like non-monogamy. Even if I have like a more primary partner, I still believe in relationship anarchy. So for me, it's like Ess and my friends and these certain people in my life are always going to be just as important. So I've struggled in that a little bit of like finding the right kind of partner because have dated people who are more monogamous. But anyways, yeah, so I would identify as well as like polyamorous, who is someone who believes in the relationship anarchy style as well.
You said dating, so let's start talking about dating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dating, yay. I'm hearing giggles. I see smiles. That's good news.
Yeah.
Cade, you've just gotten out of a monogamous relationship. So, how
Yeah.
is dating going for you at this moment?
Well, what's really fun is like, so I kind of mentioned like I'm trans, and so I've been on testosterone for almost 4 years now. And previous to this, I was like identifying as a lesbian. So like, I dated women for my entire life, pretty much from like the age of 17 until now. Slash, I actually started exploring my bisexuality, my pansexuality probably like 3 years ago. And so now coming out of this relationship, something that I'm really focusing on is like, I think I'm actually a gay man. And it's like such a wild thing to like sit with just because of my like I was such a lesbian. Like I like it was just I was so gay for women, and not that I'm not, like I still think women are absolutely beautiful, and like there are so many beautiful types of people. I think people are beautiful, but I'm just like really craving masculine energy, and it's a lot. But it's cool all at the
Yeah.
same time. So dating for me is looking like kind of experiencing something really new to me, but also just like kind of using this time to I always like to reflect after a relationship and look back on like what are things that I could have done better, or like how could I have like I'm a big like growth person, like growth mindset, and so
Mm-hmm.
wanting to give myself space to kind of like just digest the relationship a little bit too, because definitely have in my early 20s was like a bit of a serial dater and just like jump from relationship to the next, and I now as an adult realize that that's like not necessarily the most healthy thing to do.
Okay, so, can you give a little bit of the story of, okay, you went from,
Mm.
let's say, serial dating, your
To being poly.
realization or coming, yeah, to being poly, and also transitioning in the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
How did that work with dating? I mean,
yeah.
yeah, it's such a big
I
question,
was
and there's so much to it.
totally, yeah. Like to wrap it up into like without taking up all of the time that we have. I was like dating somebody, um, and we opened up our relationship. And then when we broke up, I stayed poly, and then I was transitioning through the beginning of my poly journey. And so I was like really like dating for the first time as Kaide while I was being poly. And so that was like really cool because I really got to like kind of figure out myself by like putting myself out there to lots of different people and like kind of just like playing in that space as I like discovered more and more of myself. And then, having really incredible friends in my life who like kind of held my hand through that gender journey, we're gonna call it. Like, and so it was interesting because like it wasn't like I was constantly dating other people, but as I was dating people, but I was also, like I said, I was like dating my friends. So through my transition, it was like I was deepening my friendships while also like having other like partners and like exploring sexuality and things like that through like other people. But really was just like also in a place of like I used the term solo polyamory because I was like really just focused on me throughout a lot of that time. So I never really had a like a a nesting partner or like somebody who was like my more primary partner esque through that time of my transition because it was for I was my primary partner and I still feel that way. I always feel that way that like I am my primary partner at the end of the day. And so yeah, that was kind of like a really cool journey. And even now like as I'm like still having first and like things are changing, it's like, it's been really cool to like with this like realization of my sexuality to like now like step into that and just kind of like see where that's gonna go. And like I'm kind of hoping that I like maybe I'll connect with somebody, like who knows, like I'm just kind of like got like the doors kind of open and I'm just kind of chilling like I'm just like, well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, how has your experience changed from dating as a lesbian, like you said, to now dating as a trans man and maybe a gay man, you mentioned?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, I don't know because I can't bring myself to actually go on a date with a man. So
Oh,
that,
what?
and yeah, well, because I literally, I just got out of this like 1 year long monogamous relationship and I hadn't really ever explored this before that. So this is all new to me. And I'm also like kind of grieving this relationship loss and just like navigating life. And so
Mm.
now I'm just like sitting here being like, oh my gosh, like how do I even start? I don't even know. I'm just we don't know.
What do you think will be the biggest challenges?
Finding them, finding like meeting people, like because my network is so based in the like lesbian butch community and or like mostly I would say like I have a lot of like trans masc friends, but they're not necessarily people that I want to date. They're my friends. Not that you can't date your friends because it's super fun to date your friends, clearly. um, but yeah, I don't know. I think just like kind of figuring out how to like put myself in the places where they are, but also like this is something that we can both kind of speak to is that like I do not consume alcohol. I've been on and off of it in my like throughout my 20s and stuff, but for the last couple of years, I just like I'm trying to put this right, S, and you can help me with this because I know that there's like better ways to put it. But like I don't drink. I don't want to go to a bar and be in those kinds of spaces. So I think that there's also this like gap that has to be bridged for people like that in our community who don't partake in that kind of uh what's the right word? How do I describe this without what's the proper
There's
words? Help
like
me.
sober curious and like
Yeah.
sober oriented, where
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
people who want to participate in community or events without being in an environment of like binge drinking or like overuse of alcohol. And it's really, really hard because the queer community and substances often like are take up the same spaces.
Mm.
And so, yeah, is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you. I was really having a hard time there. I was like, how do I say this right? But yeah, so I think like finding community because especially like gay male culture, I feel like when they go to the bar, it's just like a wild, wild ride out there, like, and we experienced a little bit of, S and I went to Vancouver Pride this year and we went to a couple of different like after hour club stuff. And I was like very overwhelmed. Like I was just like, oh my God. And so I think just like dating in your 30s is so different. Like dating in my 20s, like, yeah, I could just like randomly invite somebody over from Tinder and be like, yeah, come over to my apartment. It's like no problem. Like, you know, and now like someone asked me for my phone number and I want to like delete them instantly. Like it's wild, like the difference in how I've experienced that. So yeah, I think just like figuring out how to find a way into the community and find the right connections because of the kind of person that I am, like, you know, emotionally, spiritually, all those things. And then just like obviously the lens of being a trans, like that being trans and like trying to enter into a space with like cis men can just be hard.
Yeah.
Obviously. Like, yeah, you're still seen sometimes as like a woman simply because of, you know, transphobia still is rampant within the queer community as well, and especially when you're intersecting between two like very, you know, cis spaces when it comes to like gay men and lesbians. So that like, you know, being non-binary and in the middle is kind of like this gray area of like, well, I'm still attracted to both, but how do I feel seen as a trans person? And I think that's where now prioritizing trans relationships, so like wanting to date trans women or other trans men or other non-binary people too, just because I think that layer is really important to feeling like understood by somebody, because that's not something you can explain. You kind of have to experience it in your own way.
How is dating going for you?
That question is so hard to answer because it's so vague, which is the point, because you're trying to get all these different kinds of answers from the people that you interview. But like, it's such a hard landscape, I think, post-COVID. And then I'm in recovery. So I just celebrated 3 years of sobriety, and it's something that I've had to work really hard for. And so dating in sobriety has been really hard. And then I also identify as asexual. And so there's like a lot of that's really complicated. And so how's dating going? I mean, for the most part, I'm just hanging out with my people and I'm not really thinking about it too much. But then I was also thinking, like, okay, in the last year, let's say, how many first dates have I gone on? And like over 10, I would say.
That's quite a
First
bit.
dates. Yeah. So then I'm like, okay, well, I am sort of dating. Like I'm trying sometimes to date. And I think what it is that when I was an alcoholic in my 20s and dating, and I was a lot less connected to who I am as a person, it would take me a while to figure out like, oh, I'm not compatible with this person. And so I would date people for like a month only to realize like, oh, we actually have nothing in common and we have zero chemistry. And I think part of that is because I was drunk. And so you're like a lot less inhibited and you're a lot more willing to like, sleep with people or like go home with people or like get phone numbers. And when you're sober, like Kaide was describing, like this like really anxiety feeling, when you're sober, you're like a lot more connected to the impacts of these things. And so you're a lot less likely to do them. That's part of it. The other part of it is that I fall in like really easily because I think people are just so interesting. A huge part of my job and my career is just like studying people and their behavior and trying to figure them out. And so that's also what I'm doing when I'm dating. I'm like really trying to pull people apart and figure them out and what makes them work and what makes them tick. And I really enjoy that process, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like I actually like am attracted to this person or that I'm actually like interested in pursuing this person. And it's taken me a while to like figure that out. And so when I'm on these first dates back in the day, I'd be like, oh, we're having such a great time because I'm doing all this labor of like getting to know someone and like having like making sure this is a really nice time.
Yeah.
And then it takes me like a month, of dating them to be like, oh, did we ever have chemistry or did I just like decide that I really wanted to figure them out? And so now I go on first dates and I don't do that much labor, and I let myself be really organic and being like, if we have chemistry, it'll show up. And like actually like meeting Kaide and getting to know Kaide and some other people around that time was really instrumental, because before Kaide, I dated this girl for a month and it was like really awkward and hard, and like she was smoking hot. But other than that, like we just didn't have anything in common. And so I'd like just broken up. Well, I ghosted her after a month because I am really bad at transitioning. And so when I met Kaide, it was this like refreshing, like, oh, I don't actually have to work for this. Like when I have chemistry with someone, it's organic and it just happens. And I can just follow that. And so that has made me a lot more like quick to be like, oh, first date, yeah, it was nice. I'm sure you're a great person. There's nothing here. I'm gonna move on.
As you mentioned, and actually, Kaide, you also mentioned this, dating sober. Now, in our 20s, I would say, I'm assuming, or maybe speaking for a collective conscious. In my 20s, I don't think anyone around me was sober, but that's also because I was not either. In my 30s, I mean, I also do not drink anymore, and I have friends around me, but mostly I see this happening with people in their 40s and 50s. How is it to be in your beginning 30s and be dating sober? And yeah, how is that?
I mean, on the one hand, I feel like for me, it weeds people out really quickly, because if I'm on an app and it's like very clear in my bio that I'm sober. And if I'm like talking to someone and they're like, hey, let's go to a bar, then I'm like, okay, well, first of all, you didn't read my bio.
Yeah.
And second of all, then I'm like, oh, actually, I'm sober. Like, I'd prefer to like do these other things. And if they're like, if they have like a different response to that, then I'm like, oh, I don't even need to meet you. I know this isn't going to work out. I think kind of in a similar vein with what Kaide was talking about earlier with trans people, and like as a non-binary person, I also am trying to prioritize dating trans people, because I think that there is an element of like being known in a way that is hard to find with cis people. It's not impossible, definitely, but it is a priority for me right now. And so in a similar way, it's also a priority for me to date people who are sober, because there's just a component to that piece of life. And like for me, my recovery is really important to me, and I put a lot of time and effort into that. And so if I'm like dating someone who doesn't really understand that, or doesn't know what that entails, that's a lot harder to like navigate together. And also like, yeah, I want someone whose values align with mine, and that's a big part of it. So it definitely like is a good filter, I would say.
Yeah.
But the dating pool is considerably smaller.
Agree.
So yeah. And then I did actually go sober speed dating about a year ago.
How
And
was
it was
that?
awful.
Oh,
Because I think speed dating already is awful, which I noticed is a title in one of your earlier episodes. And then to like be sober and have a whole bunch of other sober people doing it, like I'm a pretty like empathetic person, and the anxiety in this room was just like through the roof. It was so hard to be a part of and just be like, everyone is like losing their minds. Like it's so overwhelming. You have like 3 minutes to like get to know someone, and then you have to make a decision on whether or not you want to see them again. And like everyone in this room is beautiful. Everyone is like probably a lovely person. How do you know that in 3 minutes, And so
it's
I
a
just
trick.
feel like, yeah, it was a
Is
hot
it
mess.
chemistry or is it a trauma bond?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I did go on one date with someone from this speed dating, and it was absolutely a trauma bond, because in our 3 minutes, what I said to her was, "Are you okay?" because I don't think I'm okay right now. And then we just talked about how overwhelming this whole experience was. And so we ended up like both writing each other's names down, and we went on a date. And I was like, oh yeah, no, we have nothing in common. The only thing we had in common was the fact that we found that experience overwhelming.
I feel like there's potential for some sort of gossipy juiciness since you know each other so well and so long now. Have let's begin with you, Cade. Have you ever seen as going through, meeting someone, dating someone, a relationship, and you just thought, what are they doing?
Oh, um, I don't. I feel like It wasn't like a what are they doing in like in necessarily like a bad context, but it was a very like I'm very curious to understand why this is like why this relationship is what it is for them. They have this like one partner who they never talked when they didn't hang out, but in between times that they hung out,
Ooh.
they saw each other maybe once a month. And this happened over the course of like 2 years, like, right? S? Is that
Yeah,
right?
almost 2 years. Yeah.
Almost 2 years. And like they had like a few sleepovers. They just when I say that S and I are the complete opposite when we date, there is no there we are there is two ends of the spectrum, and we are on the complete opposite ends of it, because I'm like let's hang out a couple times a week kind of person as I'm getting to know somebody, or like let's see how this is going or whatever. And I was like shooketh to my core. I was like, you haven't talked to them in how long? You haven't seen them in how long? And it was just like a very like eye-opening experience to me, realizing that like S and I are just very different. And so I think it was a cool experience for them though, because S hadn't been dating for quite a while prior to this person. And so this like slow like burn out situation that they had, I think was like a really like it was good for them in some ways. Like they learned a lot in that dynamic and whatnot. But I remember just being like, what is the point of this? Like, what are we doing here? Like, and it fizzled out over time or whatever. But yeah, I remember that specific dynamic. They were a wonderful person, and they ended up hanging out with all of us like one time, and like they had good vibes. It wasn't that they were like, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, why is this person like, why are we spending time with this human being? They're terrible. It wasn't even that. It was just like the total dynamic of their relationship. I was like, huh, all right. Like,
Yeah, something different.
yeah, very different.
And
Yeah.
as same question
Oh
for
God.
you regarding Cade.
I feel like I'm nervous for this one.
Yeah, Kate has a lot more like relationships, I think, in the years that we've been in each other's lives that I could pick from to to talk about. But there's this person, and they ended up like breaking up and getting back together, and breaking up and getting back together.
Which is so not my vibe usually.
Not usually. And there was
But
like
this person.
yeah,
Whatever it is.
this person, it was like quite a long relationship overall, and like it was a very intense relationship, and like there was some like really serious things going on. But I remember like we were driving somewhere in the car, and Kate and I were having this conversation, and it was like right after they broke up the first time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything Kate is telling me, I'm like, dude, no, like this is not how we deserve to be treated. This is not what we are settling for. In these breakup conversations, sometimes I'll be like, would I ever say that to you? Like, would I ever do that to you? No. So don't let other people do that. And I remember Kate specifically saying, yep, like you're right, it's over, like I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
And then ended up getting back together with this person, and like I said earlier, disappeared a little bit. And there was a point when Kate like came back to me, and I was like, okay, Betty, like, what are we doing? Kate was like, I know I said I wouldn't do it, and then I did it. Like, yeah. And so then I was like, what do you need from me to help you like through this and break up with this person? Because clearly this is like a lot, and it's taking a
Yeah.
lot out of you, and it's like you're unwell, like you're so unwell, and like I'm making him dinner and I'm like really trying to take care of him and like support him like through this process. And so I was like, just tell me what I need to do. Let me fix it for you. Yeah.
What is it that you're looking for or hoping to find with dating?
I'm just looking for more people to like collect into my community. That's really what it's about. Like, I don't have any like really specific things that I'm looking for. I'm not necessarily looking for what we call like a nesting partner, which is someone you live with long term, or yeah, I don't have any like real clear definitions. I think my life has been such a roller coaster that I've learned not to try and clearly define things like that or try and plan like that. So I'm really just looking for like really rad people that I want to be a part of their life, and I want them to be a part of my life. And whatever form that shows up, that's great.
When you're going for these first dates, is this something you share with people right away?
No, not totally. I actually removed polyamory from my bio because I was looking at my bio and I was like, there's a lot of disclaimers. Like, if I put on my whole identity and like everything that I am, like, there's just like so many things. And people, I think, have their own conceptions of what polyamory looks like or what, these different parts of me look like. And so, but polyamory especially has like a huge, like, people define it differently and like show up differently in it. And so it's actually something that I reserve a little bit more till like a second or a third date when I'm like, oh, I'm really curious about this person, and like we have enough chemistry and have enough of a vibe that I'm like wanting to get to know them. Then at that point, I'll set some sort of intention and ask what their intention is as well. But I think with a first date, like that's not really the time to break that out because you're just trying to see like, can we even carry a conversation, honestly? Like before I start coming back at you with like queer theory, let's just, you know.
And Cade, what are you looking for or hoping to find with dating?
I think like a little bit of what we talked about is just like this like exploration of this new identity that I'm kind of gonna have to dive into a little bit. And I think like, you know, a big part of it is just allowing it to happen when it's going to happen. I like to get really excited about people, and I I just am like, oh, this person's great, and like I was just like, we'll end up, yeah, kind of similar to how Ass was saying. Like sometimes it would take a bit of time for you like them to realize like that they're maybe not compatible with this person, and so slowing things down a little bit for me is going to be really important because I think in order to really get to know somebody, you need a little more time. And my new joke is that dating is a 6 month long interview. And like basically over the first 6 months, like you're just in an interview. That's all it really is.
Yeah.
We're just getting to know each other and like, and whatever. So yeah, it's just like slow and intentional, um, like connections and allowing them to just kind of happen when they're going to happen. I think that's my big like what I've gone out of this like breakup and like kind of what I've navigated in the last few months of just like what does that look like for me, focusing on
Yeah.
myself a little bit, but also like staying open.
Cade, what do you find the most enjoyable about dating?
I actually love meeting new people. I'm like, okay, so I am like the classic ambivert. I am super extroverted. I can be loud and be the life of the party. Like I will be in the middle of the dance floor, like doing the worm, being a complete hooligan. But then there are other times where I'm like literally in the corner, like the black cat. Like don't even look at me. And so I feel like um, because of that, it gives me these opportunities to really connect with different kinds of people because I sometimes will connect with the people who are the party people, but then also connect with all of the other people in the corner. And so that's like my favorite part about like dating and like is just like the experience of others in all shapes of forms. I think that's like the magic of being human, is just this like showing up authentically in these different situations. And that's something I've really tried to do, at least, is like just be absolutely authentic, because um like I know I can carry a conversation with pretty much anybody. And this is where it gets confusing. And that's what my problem is, like what S was saying, is like, is this a date? Is it a hangout? I'm like, I don't know. I can pretty much talk to anybody. So like this might feel like a date to you, but like this is just like normal for me. I'm just like able to carry a conversation. So yeah, I don't know. I love that part of the like the buzzing bee energy of dating.
So where's the line between just getting to know someone and flirting for you?
Oh, that's a hard one, because honestly, flirting goes right over my head all the time. Literally, like, have been with a partner at the ice cream shop, and the person behind the counter has like hit on me, and I didn't even know. We like got outside with our ice cream, and my partner was like, "They just hit on you," and I was like, "No, stop it! What are you talking about?" And it's, yeah. So flirting, it's like, am I flirting? I don't know. I think maybe I'm just being myself, and then I'm like, oh. Then I have like obviously intentional flirting, is like when you like, I know when I'm flirting, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I think that my energy comes off very flirtatious, like due to my like bubble. I'm very bubbly and like a bit flamboyant. So
I
yeah.
can confirm people flirt with Cade all the time.
And I just miss it all the time. It's so bad. I'll be like, what? Oh, it's just, I'm working on it. I think a little bit of that too came with like just the lack of confidence I had in myself, and like before becoming this version of myself, like before stepping into like my full, transness and all these things, I think I was like under this awareness of like, why would someone be flirting with me?
Yeah.
Like I was like in this weird like space, but now it's like I'm more accepting and able to receive those things and like realize that's what's happening, because I feel better about myself, like I'm
Cool.
like, oh yeah, yeah, I do look good today. Thank you. Like, like because I feel more confident in that, not just be like cocky or anything, but just like, yeah, more confidence in who I am as a person.
Yeah, awesome. That that yeah, fills my heart with joy to hear that that's how it's going for
Mm.
you. Like, yay you. I want to also celebrate you.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a freaking climb, that's for sure. S would know.
I
Like
can imagine.
we like I just like have a very vivid memory of going camping with them one summer in Vernon, and we just like hung out there for a couple of days, and we just had these both of us had these like just these big downloads while we were there, and I just cried a lot. A lot. And S was just like, "You're a boy, it's okay." Like just like held me and let me cry in their arms. So yeah,
Yay.
it's pretty magical experience to have that with somebody who you're so close to, obviously.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And S, what do you find the most enjoyable about dating?
I think, like I was saying earlier, like I spend so much time observing people and getting to know them, that for me, the most enjoyable part of dating specifically is learning more about myself. Because every
Mm.
person that I've connected to or been with has like taught me something or like brought something out of me and shown me different parts of myself that like those parts I have left in the past. Like I was like,
Mm.
thank you, this was nice, don't need that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I have like treasured these pieces of me that I've learned from being in connection with people. And sometimes that's because of what they've taught me, and other times it's because my conflict with them or like my chemistry with them has like brought these other pieces of me to the surface that now are like very prominent parts of me.
Yeah. And to flip the script, what do you find the most frustrating or challenging about dating?
I think it's disingenuity. Like when people are really disingenuous and are really just taking up people's time and like looking for validation, and like I get that. I understand that it's a process. It's a part of the journey of like figuring out what dating means to you. But it's so frustrating for someone who's like so busy that like when I choose to like, go on a date or like meet up with someone, then I'm like, that's not what I'm here for. Like,
Mm.
this is not a good use of my precious time. No, thank you. Yeah, that's really frustrating. And also just like really gets in the way of like what maybe could have been like a really cool connection if you like calm down a little bit and let your ego deflate a little bit, then you could get to know some really cool people. But instead, they're just out there trying to, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing, but.
And Kaide, for you, what do you find the most frustrating or challenging about dating?
I think in this, like, especially with like the lens of like polyamory, is like finding the right people that fit into kind of like what you're looking for. Because like there's so many different ways to date nowadays. Like, there is the traditional monogamous sense. There's like people who are in a monogamous relationship but then maybe have an open door, and so they have like play partners or whatever. And like there's like, we could have an entire conversation just about different freaking relationship styles, right? And so
Yeah.
I think the most frustrating part has been trying to like navigate that. Like I've been in thruples, I've been in like I've navigated dating in so many different ways. Like, I've dated like 5 people at once. I've dated one person monogamously. I've like tried it all. And so I think that's where I'm frustrated, where I'm like, I've literally tried it all. Like, what the hell? What is happening? Like, what's not sticking? And like, what of this is like me? Like what can I take away from this is like what's my responsibility in this, where do I show up in all of this as well, right? So the frustration piece has just been like kind of to figure out what the heck actually is going to work for me, and like what I maybe am doing to like not allow myself to have those things that I actually want. So yeah, it's frustrating, but I'm figuring it out.
It sort of sounds like dating for you has also been transformational in the sense that it has allowed you to figure out who you are and your identity. Is that
100%. Yeah, like I recognize that too. Like I said that, like that's probably one of the better parts about dating too, is like through my polyamorous journey, I learned so much about myself and what I do and do not want. And what I'm willing to tolerate and what I'm not willing to tolerate in relationships, right? Like um that's like been a big one, is like I'm not willing to tolerate certain things that, we're adults, like we can have conversations and be respectful even when we're mad at each other and things like that. And like these are like
yeah.
base values that I'm like not willing to compromise on, because I know now that like it doesn't have to be like that, because I have relationships like I have with S, where even when I've hurt S's feelings and we've had moments where, they might have been upset with me, they have come to me with gentleness and been like, hey, this is why I'm upset. And I can say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I did not mean to upset you, I completely understand where you're coming from. And guess what? I make the change almost instantly because I care about them. And if it matters enough for them to come to me and to tell me something, then I'm going to make the effort to make sure that they feel comfortable because I care about them. And so I apply that to all of my relationships, but that's another frustrating part, is I don't think people actually listen. They don't actually
Mm.
hear you to like understand where you're coming from. People just want to listen to react. And so maybe my frustration lies in that they all need to go to therapy, but that's a whole nother conversation as well.
Bottom line, there should
Yeah,
be a box you can check on dating apps. Been to
yeah,
therapy, yes or no?
Oh my
I
God.
agree
Game
completely.
changer.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's hilarious. There should be like, I've been to therapy Tinder. Like, jeez.
What advice would you give to people who are dating?
I think just lead with yourself, like treat yourself the way that you treat people you care about deeply. And treating yourself with a high standard also sets the standard for people that you're going to be dating and shows them like what you want from people. Like it's a huge part of why like I also I think I still am doing like solo polyamory. Like I am my primary partner. My relationship with myself is the most important one, because if I don't have that, then I can't give anything to anyone else or receive anything from anyone else until I'm like good with myself first. So lead with yourself, love yourself, and like set that standard. And then like the B side to that is like show up as the fullness of who you are in your relationships. Like don't try to like pocket some pieces of you or like put some stuff in the back of the closet on the top of the shelf. Not that anyone should be going back in the closet here. We are out of the closet, but you know, like if you meet people with the fullness of who you are, and then people start to date you, they'll be dating you because they want to get to like continue to know you and like be loved by the fullness of who you are. And if you try and like hide stuff and not really show up super authentically or like in the fullness, then you're going to meet people who down the road or end up like leaving you or hurting you because they didn't know you fully and they couldn't know you fully.
Kate, same question to you. What dating advice or words of wisdom would you give to other people?
And this is like from my experience, obviously, I would say like stick to like if you're feeling a certain type of way about something, I want to be non-monogamous. I want to do this. Like own that and stick to it, because I think sometimes we fall back into old patterns of what feels comfortable, i.e., me dating women. And, like it's okay to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations. It's okay to explore this and like give it and let it be fun. I think that's like the biggest part of dating, is that it should be playful. Like we're out here, all of us are out here trying to live our lives, trying to pay our bills, trying to do the stupid shit that we have to do. And dating, like it can be serious in the sense that we can build a life with a person, we can build our life up with people, but it doesn't have to be anything but playful at the end of the day, and I really, 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 I'll put another really believe in radical honesty. And so if you are being radically honest with yourself and with other people, then you're going to continue to create authentic relationships and connections. And that's the only way like actual dating is going to happen, is when we're actually being authentic with ourselves and with others. Because these masks that we like to put up for others, they, at some point they're going to come crumbling down. And it's hard to like not to like look back and be like, oh wow, I really didn't even know this person. So like showing up as your full self is like definitely another thing that I'm gonna voice that with the S there. Yeah. And don't rush things. That's my other big one. There's all the time in the world to do all the things. In some ways, obviously time is also a precious resource, so make sure you're spending it with the person that you want to spend it with.
Dating Log is recorded and hosted by me, Wyndham Juno. It is produced by Harry Dark. Our artwork is in collaboration with Esme Hemming Studio. Season 2 is in full swing, so if you'd like to be on the show or know someone who could do with a Dating Log intervention, then send us a message. You can DM us on Instagram at datinglogpodcast or email us at datinglogpodcast@gmail.com. Our website is datinglogpodcast.com. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're feeling really generous, leave us a review. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a fresh episode. In the meantime, please don't ghost us.